When an influenza virus spread on a world scale, becoming a pandemic, it causes panic, disorders, and death. Infrastructure paralysis, hospitals overcrowding, and school closure are some of many hardships that the pandemic might cause, as it happened with the avian and the swine flu. But in the modern society, where information ran quickly, a proper communication strategy could help avoiding many of these issues.
We are looking at ways of improving what we call communication during crisis situations, where in fact if there is an infectious disease outbreak, we are able to provide effective communication to various sectors of the population, particularly healthcare workers in particular, to the general public of course, and to subpopulations who may be at high risk, such as the elderly and the chronically ill or pregnant women and children.
Tell Me is a 36-month collaborative project co-funded by the European Commission, whose purpose is to develop new models for improved risk communication during infectious disease crises. Tell Me involves experts in social and behavioral science, communication and media, health professionals at various levels and specialties, and representatives of civil society organizations.
The main concept behind of the project is that the revolution in information technology, information and communication technology is posing new problems, but also providing new opportunities for communication and for involving the people, the citizens, from the very beginning in decision making. Top-down communication case of epidemics is over. To take seriously a two-way communication approach means to take seriously what people think and try to address really their requests, their doubts, their fears. This is the bet, this is the challenge, and this is what we are trying to do with the Tell Me project.
The project aims to get answers to fundamental questions such as: how should public health communicators instruct the population about effective preventive actions? What are the most appropriate communication methods? What's wrong with communication strategies in the past? In order to get these answers, Consortium's members are discussing and carrying out researches. For instance, the BMJ is investigating the role played by social media during crisis.
And we're producing a report for the Tell Me project on the past and present uses of social media in public crises and sort of epidemics. Social media is like a really interesting tool to be sort of using and applying during an epidemic, because it gives us an insight into the public's sentiment about and feelings about an emerging outbreak. We can sort of really see what they're talking about. So I think, you know, a more scientific approach to the assessment of tweets and what people are actually saying could really benefit crisis communications.
And scientists from the Istituto Superiore di Sanità analyzed population's behavior during the 2009 pandemic.
We are the leader for the first work package. Work package 1 was the very beginning of the project. We analyzed the evidence in literature about the behavioral response of population in case of outbreaks. We organized the work made by other partners. UK with Cedar Tree, Israel with Haifa University, and USA, and finally CSSC, and Belgium with VUB. The summary report was the first milestone of the project and is a comprehensive work that deals with the main issues emerging during this outbreak.
One of the main topics discussed during the first Tell Me meeting regarded communication issues about vaccines. A lack of transparency on this theme gave and might give grounds for myth and urban legends about vaccination to spread. Exemplary in this way are recent cases of vaccine withdrawal in several countries.
The first call was with a vaccine that never went out of the walls of the factory. So it was a routine quality control system that found out that 2 lots out of 32 were not negative to the sterility tests that are routinely done in any biological production. So those lots were simply stopped. So when we speak withdrawn, retired, false words, because those things never came out from the building. So the second story in which some protein aggregation were found in the vials, visible, well, those also were safe vaccine. To be safe means that they passed all the tests. There were these aggregations that are not infrequent in biological products. But unfortunately, we are already seeing a drop in the acceptance of vaccination by the population because it was such a disaster communication and the trust of vaccine was very much affected.
Communications is really important in a crisis because it's the means by where you understand the impact, the impact to people, the impact to maybe your assets, your buildings, your infrastructure, your equipment, even your IT and your data, and the impact to the organization itself, the business. And if it's a pandemic, it may be, the impact to the society, to the public. And once you understand the impact, you can then work out what your priorities are, develop an action plan, and then you communicate it out.
One of the consortium's purposes for the next 2 years is to work out a communication kit and to develop a simulation model to recreate the dynamic of a pandemic, taking into account the influence of modern communication systems on this event.
We can use these kinds of agent-based modeling, as it's called, to try out different control strategies, different ways of countering the pandemic. If we can represent what happens in society inside the computer, then we can carry out all sorts of investigations and experiments and so on in the computer, which we couldn't possibly do in real life. And then we can use what we learned from that to guide policy making in the real world.
Any response to any public health emergencies, whether it's an epidemic, a pandemic, or even a humanitarian disaster, crisis communication must be at the core of the response, not just a part of it, not just an afterthought. And more, luckily, we are seeing many institutions are taking crisis communications in the planning stage and they're involving them in the response to public health emergencies.